To follow that. Hello and welcome. I'm Danielle Gagny and I'm the editorial analyst for Commercial UAV News. Before we get started with today's webinar, launching the era of autonomous inspection Q&A with Skydio executives, we have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have any technical questions or issues using the webinar platform, please use the chat box and we will respond right away. If you have any issues with audio, please click on the phone icon above the chat window to receive the teleconference info. For those that do call in, to ensure call quality, everyone's lines have been muted today. However, we do want this webinar to be as interactive as possible, so we encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation, especially since the title of this webinar contains the term Q&A. You can do so by typing your questions into the Q&A box and selecting all panelists when submitting your question. We will also have technical experts from Skydio on standby to answer any of your questions, so feel free to engage throughout the presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will have our presenters answer questions. If we are not able to get to all of the questions, we will be responding after the webinar via email. If you happen to get disconnected, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your webinar confirmation email. If you continue to experience difficulty, please email info@expouav.com and we will respond right away. This webinar will be recorded and you will receive a thank you email with the on-demand materials within 3 business days. Now that it is done, I'll hand it over to Guillaume.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us again here on the Skydio webinar series. If you've been here before, you know I'm Guillaume Delapine. I'm on Skydio's marketing team, and you're about to watch me do my absolute favorite thing, which is sit around and talk drones with people who know more about drones than I do. So today we've got a really fun session coming up. You are currently enjoying the welcome to the panel section, but next, our CEO, Adam Bree, will be talking about why we built 3D Scan, the revolutionary new piece of software that we announced just a week ago at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Alden Jones, our VP of Customer Success, will be talking a little bit more about what 3D Scan can do, how it influences your operations, how it changes the way that a drone program can operate for the better. And then we'll be opening up to a panel where our VP of Autonomy, Hayek Martiros, will be joining Alden and Adam and answering some of the questions from the Rocket Center event. And if you're sitting there confused and you have no idea what I'm talking about, well, I'm sorry that you missed out on our event last week. On June 2nd, we announced Skydio 3D Scan at an event called the New Era of Autonomous Drone Inspection. And this is a real watershed product that absolutely changes the way that inspection is going to get done, and especially the inspections that are done by drone. And so I wanted to just share, the first teasers that you can understand kind of the level of production and excitement that came from this event. And, maybe we can encourage you to go check it out on skydio.com and watch the entire video. So let's have a look.
Welcome to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm Adam Bree, CEO of Skydio, and we're here today to launch 3D Scan.
We were incredibly fortunate at that event to have the support of 9 different launch partners, other companies that were helping us promote the event, to have the support, of course, of DivCom and the Commercial UAV Expo, and of the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. We're absolutely thrilled with the attendance and the way that this webinar has been kind of welcomed by the entire industry, and the way that the product is too. So thank you to all of you who of course played a role in that. And as we showed this video, there was a Q&A box. We've gone through the Q&A box and are hoping to answer some of the most trending questions from that Q&A box today, and have those answers come from the talent those who presented, and those three are of course here on the webinar with us today. I'm going to give each of them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Maybe let's start with Adam, and then Alden and Heike, you can introduce yourselves, and we'll move on through.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam, CEO of Skydio. Very excited to be with you here today and answer questions.
Morning, everybody. Alden Jones. I lead the customer success team. Pleasure to be here with you.
Hey everyone, I'm Heike. I lead the autonomy team. Also super excited. Let's do this.
I'll just note that Alden is so committed to customer success that he's in the field helping customers succeed as we speak.
Hollywood, Alabama. Really nice here, actually. Next to a nuclear power plant.
All right. Alden's life is really boring. He never gets to do any of the fun drone stuff. Well, this is great. Thank you to the three of you for coming on this panel. I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy seeing their questions get answered by the likes of you here live. So now I'm going to turn things over to Adam to say a little bit more about what is 3D Scan, why we would build a product like this.
Thanks, Guillaume. We're here. We're excited to answer your questions. We just kind of want to give you brief background for those that maybe don't have the full context. So we'll go through this pretty quickly, but just a brief background on the product. So the motivation for building 3D Scan was pretty simple. We looked out and saw all the incredible things that people are doing to try to gather data about the physical world. So this is one example from bridge inspection, where people use snooper trucks that are incredibly expensive, very dangerous, and put themselves in harm's way to gather this data. So this story is true in a number of different industries across a number of different applications, and it seems like something that drones can help with. But the status quo with most drones that are out there today is really not very impressive. If you want to do anything autonomous, you're essentially limited to a 2D flight plan where you drag out on a GPS map, you say, this is the area I want to look at, and the drone is basically like a low-flying satellite. And you can do some useful things here, but it really fails at most of the most interesting, useful things that somebody might want to inspect or document. The real breakthrough with 3D Scan is it's aware of its environment. So we're using the core of the Skydio autonomy engine to understand what's around us and make intelligent decisions. And that allows us to adapt to essentially any structure or scene and capture it in exactly the right way for whatever the task is. So we really see 3D Scan as being at the center of a number of different professional uses of drones. The product is designed to make it really easy to capture data about the physical world. What you do with that data varies depending on the application in the industry. So 3D Scan makes it possible to do rapid field assessments where you can fly the drone, get the data about the structure, and then right there in the field using the Edge Viewer, scroll through it, see what you've got. You can also take the data, put it into a downstream photogrammetry software to generate a really high quality digital twin. We're very optimistic about this. This is something that's grown over the last few years, but I think that maintaining digital twins is really the future of asset inspection. You can use the data to generate detailed inspection reports. And in the public safety world, you can use the data to have a clear record of a crime or an accident scene. So there's kind of two stories to 3D Scan. One is it's really a huge lever for delivering value because it enables you to get data faster. It enables you to make sure that you're getting the right data so you don't have to go out and re-inspect things. And it enables you to process that data faster. So compared to kind of status quo manual drone techniques, there's enormous savings. The other side of this, though, which I think is probably more important, is it enables you to fly missions that would otherwise be impossible. So it's hard to quantify the value in those situations, but this is not comparing against traditional drone techniques. This is comparing against techniques that are far more expensive and dangerous.
Right, absolutely. Thanks, Adam. And for those who are interested, there's a fantastic article by Danielle Gagne, who opened this webinar, about how important it is that we start using drones across America's infrastructure as we try to modernize it and protect it. We need this value. We need this efficiency to be able to get all of it done. And those who will get it done are Skydio customers. So let's pass the mic over to Alden Jones, VP of Customer Success, as a reminder to get a deep dive on 3D Scan and what it is as a product. I'll flip your slides, Alden.
Thanks, Cam. So I think I want to address, and hopefully we have people from both segments here, maybe some potential customers who don't have a drone program yet, and then some that do. Talk through a little bit. The first thing we want to talk about is our AI-driven flight planning. What that means in those two segments is if you don't have a drone program, you're not super familiar with drones, this is really going to help you adopt a program to begin with. So much of manual drone technology has been about sort of people in the forefront of this technology doing R&D on their own and learning as they go. And 3D Scan can help you immediately become an expert, or your organization immediately become an expert in capturing really complex structures, as Adam mentioned. If you already have a program and you're either doing manual waypoint flights or manually capturing data, right away you have a tool that is what we've all been waiting for, which is a system that will plan your mission for you, dramatically making the mission more efficient by not having to sit there for half an hour and plan the mission, or not have to go through an immense amount of training to try and trigger photos on your own. And all of this is adaptable with the different parameters that you can tune. Moving into flight monitoring, this is for anyone who has a fixed that has to drive out to a site, which oftentimes takes a long time, or if you're scanning the same site every day and you want to make sure you have repeatability. Ultimately, what this is doing is giving you a real-time view that you know you've captured the data correctly, and we'll talk about that in a subsequent slide. And then last, the back-end side of this. So we're completely agnostic to all photogrammetry engines. You can also assess the data in the field for a quick inspection, look at your actual photos, and then you know when you're actually uploading your data into the photogrammetry engine of your choice that this is all going to be successful. So this is absolutely groundbreaking technology. It's something that I think a lot of us who've been in the industry for a while wish we've had for 5 years, but it's here now, and we're really excited to talk about it. So 3D Scan is great for capturing both 3D and 2D capture. It's an extremely simple workflow. If you haven't seen the launch video, really all you're doing is setting a volume, which is basically a top, a bottom, and a couple of sides. And the drone is going to go explore the scene for you to generate that mission. And that allows you to do extremely complex structures like you see here in the top right. And there's nothing else in the market that can capture 3D in this way with absolutely no prior knowledge of the site. So even if you have a waypoint planning mission or you've done manual flight, oftentimes you need experts in that industry to kind of know how they need to capture data in this particular asset, or you've built a custom waypoint mission so that it forms a certain type of set. None of that is needed with our 3D capture. You can go completely free, and the system will do it for you. On a 2D side, obviously we wanted to make sure that we had parity there and we can do wide area mapping. Full obstacle avoidance is happening while you're flying 2D. So this is incredibly great for construction sites where you might have cranes or ladders or rebar or other things sticking up. You can still do that 2D, but you can get even closer with Skydio's autonomy technology. So to talk about a couple of features, so AR Observer, as we mentioned before, while you are flying, you can set a sort of digital observation point. It allows you to drone capture data, doing two things at once. So first, you're getting to see the overall coverage or the overlap, side lap, mapped to the structure that you're capturing, so you know that you're capturing data with the correct amount of overlap so that your model is going to be good. And then second, as many of us who are Part 107 know, you need to be maintaining visual contact with the drone as you're flying, but allowing having a plan of the mission on the screen allows you to predict where the drone is going next, see better how you're going to conduct this mission, and help you move around the scene as you're going so that you can stay safe and make sure everybody else on the site is staying safe. And then talking about real-time coverage, so as I mentioned, a lot of times people drive out to sites or try and collect data over many hours and then don't actually get the data they need to collect or to generate a really great 3D model. And with real-time AR coverage, this allows you to have complete assurance that when you leave the job site and go and upload this data, that you know you're going to get the model that you want. Of course, we know we need it to be multi-battery compatible. So you can see here this incredibly large bridge. I think this was thousands of photos. It's this huge bridge spanning a big river here. And so it was important that the drone do things completely autonomously. So it's going to come home when it needs to and needs to recharge. You can swap batteries. It'll return to mission right where it left off and keep going. It's a fully autonomous workflow. And then last, the Edge model viewer and photogrammetry. So once you're done with the mission, you can load all the photos, or you can just look at all the photos on your tablet or computer or phone. But what's amazing is we actually generate a rough 3D model on premise. So we're doing that on board the drone, and then you're using your device to view that. And just like any photogrammetry engine, you can click around in the model, see all the photos that make a composite point in space, and make sure that you've got all the data you want before you leave the site. This is something that, being on the edge is completely new. This has always been something that's been back office, and now you can do it on the job site, which is amazing. And then, as we mentioned, we're agnostic to we can work with any photogrammetry engine, but we've been partnering with Drone Deploy, Reality Capture, Bentley, Esri Pix that you can see here. And we're really excited to work with all of them. We'll continue to work and make our models even better as time goes on.
Great. Well, thanks, Alden. I don't think anybody will complain when they hear that Skydio is going to keep on working to make these models better and better. Let's now get rid of these slides so that we can all just talk. Let's see. Normally, we just have the slides the whole time. So let me make sure I can kill these. There we are. So gloves are off. Adam and Hike, if you'd like to turn your cameras back on, we're going to start here by answering some of the questions that came out of last week's launch event. We had thousands of people on the line. There were hundreds and hundreds of questions. So of course we won't answer every single one, but we do want to start hitting these in broad strokes and with a little bit of kind of grouping here. And the first kind of major theme that we noticed is people were asking, is 3D scan for me? Am I the person that is supposed to use this? There were questions like, can I use this on a nuclear facility, on a building facade, on a truck chassis? So these first questions are, who is 3D scan for? And the first thing I'd like to do is Hike, ask you, what kind of structures can we scan? What is 3D scan? Where is 3D scan going to work? And then we'll pass this question to Adam and talk about the customers and who we had in mind and who we worked with as we were building this product. So Hike, first to you.
Yeah, thanks, Guillaume. So the way that 3D scan kind of started out was us being at customer sites and particularly looking at bridge inspections and kind of large concrete faces. And we thought, okay, it'd be nice if we could just automate that part, make it the planar scan and make that really easy. And then we kind of built that and we realized the technology was super general and it just kind of grew and grew in scope, and to the point where we wanted to say, well, we want to be able to have a general purpose tool for capturing most any structure, right? So if you want to scan your backyard, you can, or a cell tower, you can, or whatever you might think of, a piece of a nuclear facility. So because there's no prior maps needed, there's no GPS that's required, there's no internet connection that's required, it really it's a purely visual tool based on the drone, observing its environment, building a map model. So feel free to try it and let us know how it goes. I think, that there's a large class of structures for which it works well. I think what I would kind of advise as limitations is, one, just look at our safety operating guidelines. So things like very thin branches and thin wires can be challenging, and you need to be aware and careful around those kinds of scenes. Right now, 3D scan is really built for kind of outside-in scanning, and that can be indoors or outdoors, but it's not going to explore kind of hallways of a building with this first version. And there's a limit of how far the scan distance can be for the 3D capture, right? So right now, if you try to scan a really large area, you'll have to decide if you set the max scan distance, it can still be large enough that it would take, many, many, many batteries. And we kind of, I think our ability to scan larger volumes will grow. But right now it's recommended for something probably between a car and kind of a large house-sized building, or I don't know, something larger than that, but not a huge, like a city block or something. And then finally, I'll just note that there's difficult types of, there's scenes with very little visual texture, might be totally textureless or very tough visual condition where we might see failures. But overall, encourage trying it on a wide range of classes. We've seen good results. You can check out kind of some of our scan galleries, and work with Alden's team to learn more about what you're interested in.
Great, thanks, Adam. Who is 3D Scan for? Who did we build this product with in mind?
Yeah, well, not only built it with in mind, but I would say built it collaboratively. So this product has been in development for the last 18 months. And one of the things that I think has been really fun for us is we've built it in very close collaboration with customers. So I'll start by just following on what Heike said. I think, the answer to the question, will 3D Scan work on X, is most likely going to be yes. It's a very general purpose piece of software. And within kind of the volume constraints that we have and the limitations around textureless surfaces or very thin structures, other than that, the answer is most likely yes. Having said that, and you can see this from our videos and some of the assets on our websites, we've definitely spent a lot of time with customers in specific industries, and generated a lot of results there. So, cell towers, construction sites, bridges, accident and crime scenes. These are areas where we spent a lot of time with customers. We've gotten a lot of feedback. We've rolled that back into the development of the product. So those are areas where, we've done a lot of testing ourselves, and we know the performance is really strong. Having said that, every day now with testing with customers, we're trying new stuff and getting really good results. So, we didn't design it to scan the 5 engines on the back of a Saturn V rocket, but if you watched our launch event, you saw that it worked really well there. And that's because it's very general purpose software.
Great. Well, we're definitely excited to see more and more people and more different kinds of operations using it. And I think what gets me excited is folks who maybe didn't use drones or didn't do any photogrammetry, starting to use these advanced capabilities. And we had a lot of questions from people like that in the chat box from last week's webinar and kind of on the social media comments from the videos that we've put out. So Alden, question for you. If I'm going from never using drones to 3D scan, or maybe I own a Skydio 2 or a Skydio X2 and I want to start using 3D scan, what does the world look like for me? How do I add these capabilities to my fleet?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So first of all, one thing I'll say that's great about 3D scan is this have a Skydio platform. Basically, we can enable it remotely. Nothing special has to happen. We just turn it on for you, and you'll work closely with my team to do that. So that's fantastic. It's easy for everyone. Going from zero to something, generally a lot of programs go through multiple phases of proofs of concepts, where they first want to make sure that the technology works at all, even though it's not efficient. Then they want to do a test on training pilots. Then they want to do a test on something at scale. Then they need to put it all together. There's all kinds of work traditionally that has gone into this that usually takes years. And what's amazing about 3D scan is our view, or my view, is that this is a month's sort of time frame. So in a quarter, you could go from nothing to 100 pilots. And there's several ways that we do that. First, the technology is immediately scalable. As Adam mentioned, it's designed to work on everything. It's general purpose. So we don't need to do any customization for your specific use case. Second, we offer training at Skydio, both online and in person, that is incredibly simple and quick. So instead of going through hundreds of hours of training, we're talking about dozens. And so the up time for a pilot, whether they're new or experienced, is very low. And then because the software we've been building it for 18 months, as Adam mentioned, working with existing customers, very confident in the overall models that we're going to produce. And because of the features in field, there's not going to be a lot of thrash where you try it for the first time and then you don't get the data that you need and then you go back. So overall, we're talking about a very short lead time going from nothing to something, and all of that can be done through my team, meeting with an engineer, showing work, get the proof of concept done, interact with our training team, get your folks onboarded, and then you're off to the races.
And Alden, you've been on both sides of this industry, right? You've made large drone purchases, you've built a large fleet as an operator, and now you're obviously with a manufacturer. A lot of people are kind of used to the way this industry works, right? Which is you go to a dealer, you go to a separate training house, you go to a separate fulfillment team. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, as you work with Skydio, what's it like, right? People are probably surprised even to hear that you're on scene as a representative of a manufacturer. So what does our program look like as people are evaluating these technologies?
Yeah, thanks. So I think to your point, it's important to understand that Skydio is a full stack shop. So we're getting you the hardware. The software is perfectly integrated because it's built by us. The teams who are helping you onboard and stand up your program, whether that's program management, trainers, solutions engineers, all of that is in-house at Skydio. And so a lot of the challenges with launching a program is corralling multiple entities. So, you have to buy, traditionally, you buy your drones from one person, you buy insurance from another, you buy training from another, then you have to cobble all these things together into a back-end system. And there's lots of coordination, and Skydio can make all of that easy, being your single solution provider. So you go from, like I said, nothing to now you're collecting 3D capture in a way that has never been done before, is incredibly simple. And all of that was trained up and enabled by the Skydio team. So you know that the information you're getting is accurate. It's certified by the OEM.
And as a drone operator, right? Let's say I want to build a fleet. I don't know where to start. How much do I need to have before I can go and have a useful conversation with Skydio to start feeling out if this is right for me?
You really don't need to have anything. So the great thing about the solutions engineering team is our job is to help you solve your problem. So if you know a problem that you're trying to solve, or you have a use case that that you're interested in exploring, our team will work directly with you to help find value and then enable you to build that business case. A lot of times programs spend years just trying to justify the cost of a program and building the business case. We have all those tools in-house and can help show you through our experience how you're going to justify this cost of the business, where you're going to receive or gain ROI. And all that can be done working with our solutions engineering and customer success teams.
Okay, tell us a little more about those tools, Alden, and kind of how they work in the process of building your program.
Yeah, so sort of a couple of step process usually, right? So you're going to start by having a discovery call with a solutions engineer, and probably your sales rep. We're going to talk through, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? So I'm trying to scan, power stations across this state, let's say. Okay, great. So we're going to figure out, all right, exactly what kind of data do you need? What are you trying to do with that data? There's one of the things is just scanning something is great, but what Skydio is going to help you do is understand how you're going to unlock the value of the data that you're capturing. So, okay, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? How often do you go out there and manually collect this? How much does it cost for you to get in a bucket truck? How many injuries do you have a year doing this? All kinds of questions that we're going to help define the value. And we do that through our discovery tool and our ROI documentation, which we have a nice little thing that you built, G, to help us go and work with the customers and go understand exactly how we're going to provide value. And they can take that back to their leadership chain. So once we sort of understand what this looks like, then we're going to go through a discussion of, okay, what is your company's timeline in order to do this? Do you want to go from 0 to 175 in 3 months? Do you want to take it in small chunks because of your budget? So we'll sort of understand that and build out the proof of concept that's right for you. And once we do that, the last piece is we always want to make sure that the customer is feeling comfortable with the data that they're getting on the back end. So it's not just us showing up to do a demo and flying. we want to look at that data with your team. We want to make sure that it's giving you the value that we're saying it's giving you. And then once that's been validated, because the training is so simple and this tool is so easy to use, unlike other programs where, and I've had to do this personally, we've validated the technology, almost 18 months before we got to scale, because then we had to scale the program for 18 months. And so here, once you validate the technology, putting people through training is relatively simple. You're working with a single source, which is Skydio for both your hardware and software. And so you can very rapidly get up to the next stage. And our teams will work with you in exactly what right sizing training is as well. So do you want individual operator training? Do you already have a program and you'd like us to train your existing master instructors and certify them so that they can go train people on your schedule? What does recertification look like on an annual or biannual basis? All that stuff we work through my team. And then at the end of the day, it's handed over to program management. We'll continually meet with you on the back end to make sure that we understand if there's any challenges. We work with product to continue to improve the software and so forth.
Right. Definitely. Well, thanks, Alden, for bearing with me through all those follow-ups. The next theme of questions, we had a lot of kind of more technical questions. And so we wanted to give some of the details. We got a lot of questions about, how does this work? Are we using SLAM? Do we use optical flow? So I want to turn this over to Hike. Hike, don't give away all of our secrets. But what's going on inside the brain of that Skydio 2 as it flies?
That's always the risk, putting engineers on a live webinar. Yeah,
Have your button.
Perfect. Yeah, so I think it's worth saying that, we've spent years and years building our visual navigation technology for the drone, right? To use the cameras on board to see and understand the environment around it. And a lot of what powers 3D scan is built on top of that. So, the drone has visual SLAM on board to track how it's moving and to build kind of a map for obstacle avoidance. Now for 3D scan, things are a little different. So there's a new layer of algorithms that build on top of that on our drone that we designed for 3D scan. And what they do is kind of, the problem with just using traditional SLAM techniques is, or at least the system that we have for visual odometry, is that you accrue drift over time. And when you're scanning a structure and you're using multiple batteries and you're relocalizing, you can't really have that drift. So we have a new layer that's closer to kind of structure from motion from photogrammetry, where you are really trying to relocalize back to where you were at the start, even between multiple flights, and eliminate drift. And same thing for our kind of the way we build this real-time, low-resolution model. It's based on kind of building on top of our core, and that's comes down to a suite of deep neural networks that we've trained for these tasks, and a bunch of nonlinear optimization problems. So ultimately, what the drone kind of does as it's scanning is first you specify that volume, and then the drone will move around the scene. You'll kind of see it, diving in and out of certain areas, and it's building a real-time mesh, and you can see that in the app. We draw it in AR, and then from that, it will generate kind of a tailor-made flight plan for you, based on the kind of resolution and this generalized notion of overlap, right? We took overlap as a percentage for planar scans, and we generalized it to a 3D structure. And it will design a flight plan based on what you wanted there. And then it will kind of execute that and capture the data set that we've, figured out that, the algorithm decides how to get coverage between every photo, so you get a really well-connected set of photos that will reconstruct a 3D model and have, kind of one component and no gaps. So that's some of what's going on under the hood to make it work.
Yeah, thanks. And we had a question come in on the chat box, like from Keith Koval. When you set the floor and ceiling limits on a bridge, will the 3D scan realize it's a bridge and inspect the underside as well as the sides and the top, right? So is 3D scan recognizing objects and saying, oh, I need to go into bridge mode here, right? Or how does it think about the structures that it's seeing?
Yeah, so largely 3D scan is thinking about the geometry of the structure without, deciding something else based on what structure it is specifically. So if you put a scan volume around a bridge, it will kind of explore that and say there's an underside here, there's the side of the bridge. It will generate a flight plan to capture all of that. So it's pretty general to any type of structure. I think as we go down the line, we might see, different important asset classes have some different, desires or requirements, and we'll try to do what we can in a really general purpose way to help everybody. And we may have things that down the line become kind of customized for specific assets. But today it's really quite general.
And and we also, I'm just going to follow, like specifically for a bridge, the simple answer is yes. Like if you give it a volume that includes the underside of a bridge, the gimbal can look straight up and it will scan the underside of the bridge. We've done a lot of that ourselves and done a lot of that with customers.
Yep. And if you're interested in seeing exactly how that looks, check out Skydio.com in the resources tab. You can go see the 3D scan gallery. We've got a beautiful scan of the bridge over the Sepulveda Dam down in Los Angeles that you can go check out. You can click around it and you can see the power of that sub-millimeter precision. Hike, we've had a few questions now about limitations for indoor flight. How does this work without GPS? Where can you go? Where can you not go? Maybe you can talk a little bit about what it's like to use 3D scan with a roof over your head.
Sure, yeah. So I think the short answer is, it doesn't require GPS because it's using the cameras to see around it, right? And in some ways, it's crazy to imagine relying on signals from space to decide where you are relative to this structure right in front of you. So the way that works is, the local map and everything is built around that structure. And if you're indoors, then you simply do it, and there's no GPS needed, and it works. If you're outdoors, then we have GPS, and I think the interesting follow-up there is, what we still geotag the photos with GPS, but it's not even just the raw GPS on our drone. The way we do it is we have refined the poses visually, so we know where the viewpoints are really precisely, and then we take all the GPS measurements we got through the flight and we kind of line up our photos so that you end up with a geotag that's actually more accurate than what you would get kind of flying our drone manually and the quality of the GPS, because we can kind of average that alignment through the whole flight. So if you're indoors and you had, no GPS at all, then we're gonna not end up with, geotags that are in the right place. But if you had any amount of GPS through the flight, then we'll put it in the best location that we could find. But the poses relative to each other will be extremely accurate from our metadata.
Right. And Hike, you're talking about pictures. We've got a question in the chat box from Jim Frank. Right. Is there a way to have the camera in photo mode be the default, always defaulting to video and, auto recording that video like you would get with consumer Skydio 2 obviously is not going to work here. So this is kind of parallel to a theme of questions that we had last week of, is the camera autonomously changing its settings to suit the scene and make sure that it's generating good pictures? Maybe you could talk a little bit about, first of all, do we take photos or video? And then second, how do we make sure we're taking good photos?
Yeah, so the simple answer is that for 3D scan, we capture photos. So the way it works is that you'll be in photo mode. We generally recommend being in kind of auto exposure, letting our camera do the right thing, which looks good in the vast majority of cases. You can lock the camera settings if you want to, and you really know what you're doing. And you can also choose whether or not to have our HDR feature on for our photos. And then the drone will generally, compute the photo viewpoints and take the photos for you, and you don't get you end up with just the data set of photos. And the drone will kind of compute some interesting things about, trying to minimize motion blur effects for you. And so actually today, if you are scanning a scene and it's dark outside, the drone will move slower while capturing photos than if it's bright outside, because the drone will look at the kind of what it takes to reduce motion blur and decide that for you. So these are the types of things that make it just, really quality of life features. So you don't end up with a data set that's got blur in it. And if it's really bright outside and you're able to kind of move quickly, then we have that, and it saves you time.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Like. That's definitely, some of the magic of playing Skydio. I think Adam and I, we've all been on demos where somebody says, "Man, that's amazing that, with the camera that's already on my Skydio 2, I can generate data like this." And a lot of it comes down to the software that your team has put in. So let's actually pivot now over to some questions for Adam about the deliverables. Right. We've talked about how the drone flies, how you generate this. How does this fit into the overall workflow that a lot of our customers are using, Adam?
So the core focus of 3D Scan is delivering really high quality data as easily and quickly and as efficiently as possible. And I talked about this a little bit in the intro, but there's different things you can do with that data depending on your application and your industry. So for a lot of folks, the photos themselves are really useful. And as soon as you fly, you'll get the Edge model viewer right there in the field a few minutes after the flight. Doesn't require an internet connection, doesn't require any extra work. And we found for a lot of customers that's sufficient. Like if you want to do a quick visual inspection, let's say that you're looking at some structure of a bridge, you can capture it, you can in the field, swipe through the photos, they're all aligned against the 3D geometry, make whatever notes you need to make. If you're looking for a particular kind of damage or particular issue, you've got the data there to look at it and sometimes make a decision right there in the field. The thing that we're seeing a lot of folks do is then take this data and upload it or process it in a photogrammetry engine such that you get a really high quality 3D model. And I would say with 3D Scan, it is for the first time possible to generate 3D models of complex structures with a drone without needing to be really like a world-class drone operator flying these things super close range, avoiding obstacles. People are already doing this, but now that we're making it easier, we expect to see a lot more of that. And I think the overall paradigm of having a digital twin from the physical world is really powerful because that can become the centerpiece of a workflow. That can be that can be something that you use to annotate issues, precisely measure damage, track changes over time. So this is already happening, but we're hoping to see a lot more of that now that it's easy to capture the data. And I think that applies for basically every application and industry where you can create this digital twin of the physical world. And then that kind of becomes the source of record for workflows within an organization related to maintenance, improvements, construction, et cetera.
Got it. And what would you say to somebody who's thinking, well, I kind of like the pictures, I kind of like the video. What's the value in having a 3D model versus just taking the media straight off of your SD card with a manual drone?
Well, look, I think it depends on what you want to do with it, but this is kind of the story of the last 50 years of technology. The more digital things become, oftentimes the easier it is to get value out of them, and the more sort of possibilities that open up downstream. So you certainly don't have to create a 3D model, but I think that more and more that's going to become the workflow that people like, because it's just the world is 3D. Working with data about the world in 3D makes a lot of sense.
I might add too that, like Adam mentioned, both are very valuable, but models are measurable. So number one, if you just want to know that something is 10 feet long or this crack is 2 inches wide, you can do that in a model, which is fantastic. The other thing is the great thing about photogrammetry is you can almost use it as a roadmap to your asset or your site or accident scene or whatever it is that you're scanning. So you might care about the photos a lot, and they might give you all the value that you need, but scrolling through like a large folder of photos sometimes takes time depending on how many photos you take. And if you use the 3D models roadmap in your photogrammetry engine and click anywhere, you can then immediately see the photos that are relevant to that one thing that you're trying to inspect. So there's value in both directions depending on what you're doing, but it's always nice to have that as well.
Nice. Alden, you should have kept your head down, because now I've got some questions for you. We've got some questions about time estimates, right? And multi-battery, right? How do I these are kind of coming in hot in the chat, right? How do I know if I'm going to need to turn this into a multi-battery flight? And what does that feel like? And especially, in keeping with the previous questions, what does that mean for the data product that comes out on the end?
Yeah, so there's probably a few ways to answer this question. The first thing is we're going to give you an estimate in the beginning. 3D scan, what's amazing about it is that it is adaptive. So, if we do go find more parts of the structure inside of the volume that we want to take photos of, that estimate might go up and down by a little bit, not too much. So you have that. But I would say probably more importantly, and probably what will happen more frequently, is that you're going to work with the solutions engineering team at Skydio, and we're going to go figure out what your average mission looks like. And if you have 10 types of missions, we're going to go help you figure out what your average mission looks like for each of those. We're going to figure out the number of batteries that you need per pilot. We're going to go help you build out this model so that whenever somebody to capture data, they're already equipped and they're not going to have to go back without incomplete. But generally, this is part of our discovery phase. And then when we come out and do demos and proofs of concept with you, we're going to test our assumptions and make sure that before you fully equip your field force that we've confirmed all of our assumptions and that you are going to get what you want.
Got it. And we're also getting questions about LiDAR and RTK, right? Obviously, two very different technologies, and not included in 3D scan today. Question for Alden and maybe Adam, right? How do we generate great models without needing those two expensive pieces of hardware?
Yeah, so we probably all three of us could answer this. I'll give you, sort of my operator take, and then the smarter guys can maybe give a more technological take. But so just zooming out, right? RTK is a complementary technology. It also works with LiDAR. LiDAR is you can think of as a different type of technology to generate a 3D model. So we're generating 3D models using photogrammetry, which is all about matching pixels, and there are some benefits to both. Generally, we think that photogrammetry solves, 95% of all use cases. There are some LiDAR cases, where you need to penetrate foliage and some things like that if you're trying to do some stuff that it's valuable. But generally, photogrammetry, in my experience, accomplishes almost everything that you need to do. From an RTK, PPK perspective, the great thing about the camera poses that the team has worked on is that we can go generate a very accurate relative model. But if you still require further degrees of accuracy, you can go use all your normal workflows. So you can still use an RTK base station, you can still use PPK, you can still use scale constraints. You can push all that through your photogrammetry engine, and there's nothing stopping you doing that, continuing to refine that accuracy if you need it, but it's also not required. It's more of a requirements thing based on your use case that the solutions engineering team will figure out with you as we go through the process.
Yeah, following on from that, the RTK, PPK are ways of getting higher accuracy out of GPS. Oftentimes they're used in order to just get better relative poses. And there's an important distinction between relative and absolute. What we find with most customers is that really what matters is relative accuracy. You want to know if something is 10 feet long or 10 and a half feet long or 11 feet long when you're building the 3D model. And you care less about where it is to centimeter level accuracy on the surface of the earth. Sometimes you do. For surveying type applications, you care about the absolute accuracy, but mostly what you care about is the relative accuracy. And that's an area where 3D scan with the super high quality data that it generates is going to perform really well, because we're getting super high quality coverage such that when you put this into a photogrammetry package, you're going to get a very accurate model out, and you can fly at very close range such that ultimately the accuracy of a photogrammetry model is pretty tightly linked to kind of the size of a pixel on the structure that you're inspecting. And with 3D scan, you can really dial down that GSD to get fine detail, which is going to turn into high accuracy. And we find that solves the majority of the use cases. In terms of LiDAR, LiDARs can be great sensors in some situations, but they tend to be pretty cumbersome, pretty heavy, pretty expensive, and we think the imagery data is really powerful. It's basically a software question of extracting the right data from that image, but the tools for doing that just keep getting better and better. And I would say that the results that you can see with 3D scan on our website, looking at the 3D models that we've generated, kind of speak for themselves in terms of the fidelity and the quality that you can get.
Right. And Adam, for the developer community that's excited and the quality of these models, we have a question from Ilya in Greece. Thank you for joining us here on this webinar, Ilya. The question is, do you provide an interface for developers, for example, to use Skydio for data collection and feed in real time to an in-house photogrammetry software?
Well, I think one of the nice things about the way 3D scan works is that we don't really have to do anything specialized. Like in order for you to ingest the photos and do interesting things with them. When you're done with 3D scan, you'll get an SD card full of geotagged photos with all the metadata associated with them. And you can do whatever you want with that. I mean, you can put them into an existing photogrammetry package. You can put them into your own custom pipeline. If you put them into an existing photogrammetry package, you can get out the other side, whatever format the software generates, an OBJ or something else that represents the 3D model, which again, you can do whatever you want with. So we're kind of working in a world of standard formats, standard metadata that makes it easy to do all kinds of things downstream with the data.
Great. That's exciting, and we certainly want to work with a lot more people. Another very common question, Adam, for you is, what is the releasing plan for Europe or South America or Southeast Asia or India? When's Skydio going global?
So look, we're working really hard on it. We have, I would basically say stay tuned for announcements. We have teams in the US that are working on this. We're hiring teams in other geographies around the world. The one that we've announced is Japan, and we've got a lot of exciting stuff happening there with customers and deployed products. But we're not stopping there. We're expanding elsewhere, and I would say stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, I sure will, Adam. The last set of questions is about the future, and I'd like to go Hike, then Alden, then Adam here. And what got me thinking about this is we had a question from Chris Brischak on the first webinar asking about an undersea version for 3D scanning coral reefs, and obviously we're not making that yet, but it was one of a lot of questions about what's coming next and what is the future. My general answer is welcome to it. You live in it. But it got me thinking, what does the future hold here? And I want to ask each of you a slightly different question. So Hike, what is the future of 3D modeling software, and how does drone data capture fit into it? And take a couple minutes.
Yeah, we had a bunch of plans, but I think we'll just work on the undersea version now. Yeah, basically, I think there's a lot that can happen with the technology, and from the user perspective, I think these things just need to get easier and easier, right? From having a drone and photogrammetry expert on site capturing data, worried about not getting the right models, and I think 3D scan helps a lot with those things, but we just need to keep making it easier and more seamless. That's why we kind of try to vertically integrate a lot of things, make it so that we understand the whole system, and you can really go from I want to digitize that thing to getting that result just as easily as possible, and of course higher accuracy, better quality. That's what we call it, kind of democratizing that and just kind of making it accessible for anybody to build 3D maps of the world. And I think one thing that's kind of exciting there is, we've announced that our cloud is coming up very soon, and just the ability to seamlessly get your data there, visualize these models, see, build capability there towards seeing that 3D index of your data, looking at changes over time is all really exciting stuff. And I mentioned kind of workflows for just like more important asset classes to just work on the interface, tune the AI, just make it work better and better. And the last thing I'll just mention is under the hood, we have a bunch of exciting technology bets that we're making that will, are not things that I can talk about right now, but is really exciting general capability that I think everyone will be hyped up about. So just know that we've got some ideas and we're really excited.
Well, when we're ready, I'll tell the world. Alden, the drone industry is still kind of learning how to work with large enterprises, especially on the manufacturing side. But if you look at the reports that we talked about earlier, you can tell it's absolutely going to need to. The drone industry is going to have to figure out how to work with large enterprises doing really big, heavy jobs. So how do you see the industry evolving to better serve the enterprise, and how do you see Skydio contributing to that?
Yeah, so I think I'll just start with a little bit of history. I was conference September of 2018, right? saw Phantom, and I saw my first marriage engine ever. And right away, I knew that the world can be different, and we're now in a different world. And so let me explain what I mean by that. So if you're working for any large organization that has lots of jobs to do, thousands or hundreds of thousands of fixed assets or whatever, generally across all those businesses, there is a flow where somebody who is remote goes to a remote place to capture data and then brings it back. There's a translation of that data. Sometimes there's human errors. Sometimes people argue over whether or not it's right. Then people go back and collect it again. Then they come back. We argue about it a little more. And eventually it gets into a system of record that a large enterprise holds. And they transact on that, whichever way they need to transact on that to run their business. And ultimately, the vision that I think I have and why I was so excited to join Skydio and I think we're helping people with is, what if we could take all of those jobs, digitize them, allow a large organization to coalesce around a single known piece of data that has been proven accurate in proofs of concept. We can go and measure it however way we want to make sure that it's the accuracy that you need. We know that because of how scalable and easy and automated data collection is with Skydio, that you have a repeat process so you can trust that data flow every time. And then ultimately, large organizations can build a transactional process that rapidly becomes automated and more efficient because you're transacting on a digital thing that you can then use software to make go faster. And so ultimately, that's where I see the world going. And all the things that we're talking about digitizing, whether it's the entire US bridge portfolio or every cell phone tower in the world, or you can start to think really big. And then you can start to think, well, what if we just had all of this data at our fingertips and we wanted to go make automated processes because we trusted the data? And ultimately, what 3D Scan will allow you to do is trust the data that you're getting from the get-go so you can move way faster. And that's what I think. I think the enterprise is going to be able to leverage this in a way that is truly unique because they can apply the capital to go build these massive automated processes and then move really fast and gain efficiency.
Got it. Thanks, Alden. Adam, question for you about the future. When people see 3D Scan, it's really impossible to argue that that's not an amazing piece of autonomy. How do you see this as a milestone on kind of the overall journey towards full autonomous drones?
So I think the overall trajectory and what we're trying to make happen at Skydio is this transition from drones being things that require a ton of work to get them to do any useful thing for you to tools that work for us. And with 3D Scan, we're introducing what we see as a core piece of workflow automation. We're taking sort of what we see as being at the center of a lot of enterprise use of drones and making it highly automated. And really what we're trying to do there is provide leverage. So I use this analogy a couple of times, but if you think about the computer industry, it used to be that if you were a computer expert, I'm talking 50s, 60s, you were working in punch cards, you could get some things done, but it took a ton of work. And now if you're a quote unquote computer expert, you can sit down at a laptop anywhere in the world and essentially have just this massive infrastructure of cloud compute and software tools at your disposal to do incredible things. And at some level, that's what we're trying to do with drones. So it's not about, this kind of comes up do we not like drone pilots? Do we not like drone operators? No, we're trying to give people in the drone world the most powerful tools to get the most work done. So I think that 3D Scan is kind of a core workflow automation piece. And in the macro trend, we see this really as a key link to getting to real significant scale, where drones can become tools, infrastructure that are working for us constantly in the background, collecting useful data, automatically detecting damage, and providing enormous value to the organizations that use them and enormous leverage to the people that are operating them.
Right. Well, I think I speak for the entire drone industry when I say how excited we are to see all of that come to light. My boss is in the background pressuring me to show you all how excited I am. I've got the Skydio logo shaved into the side of my head right now, just because of just the incredible level of excitement and what this makes you think and feel when you see all these things. We're at 2 minutes to the hour here. Thank you so much to everybody who's here on the webinar as a participant. We've done our best to answer your questions in the chat box. If you haven't had your question answered, definitely come to skydio.com/3dscan. Come engage with the chat bot on skydio.com and check out our support pages and YouTube videos. We really do want to help you understand this and make the right decision to see if 3D scan fits in your enterprise. I also want to thank our panelists. We've had 3 of the busiest people at Skydio not only come to film with us in Alabama last week, but then work together on this panel just to answer questions. And as we grow here, a lot of these drone manufacturers can feel really distant. And I just want to say, for the 3 of you, we really appreciate how you've stayed accessible to the industry and to the rest of us as a company too. Another thank you goes to Commercial UAV. This is normally about the time that I get the yank from Danielle, and she comes in to let you know about all the great housekeeping. But most importantly, thank you to everybody who joined the webinar today. Be safe out there flying, and we look forward to helping you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Guillaume, Adam, Alden, and Heike. It was a really informative webinar. I really enjoyed listening to all of you. Before we sign off today, we have a few remaining bits of business. Stay tuned for a follow-up email on accessing the on-demand version of today's program. We are always eager to receive your feedback, so please complete the short survey that will appear when you log out. And thank you all for taking the time to attend this webinar, and I'll say safe flying as well. Have a great day.